in these films, which were reductionist, as I said, paring down, scaling down things. I think they called it themselves a pencil gray light, you know, which was diffuse rather than stark, black and white. But then again, Bergman was very good when he wanted to use stark, contrast-filled lighting. He didn't do so. Think of the cinematography in Persona, which would have been impossible without the state of the art bring together these two women's faces, in, you know, seamlessly into one sort of a monster face, if you will. And of course, if you look at the nightmare sequence, you might remember in White Strawberries, in the beginning, that the old man has. There, it's filmed like a silent film, and it's in a way a reference to Victor Sjöström, who plays the main part in that film, the silent film director. And that's supposed to, I think, remind one of silent film in the way it's shot. And so, but then, of course, interestingly, continue. I mean, there's one thing about, I'm going to stop soon, but there's one thing that one forgets about Bergman. He was not only a kind of a impassioned, neurotic director, you know, full of his own stuff. He was also a very good businessman. I mean, he knew which people to work with and hold on to those people, professionals, who he knew that would help him do the best he could in this field. One of them was Sven Nykvist, and of course they cooperated also on the color films, you know, experimented and cooperated, and not surprisingly, Sven, of course, ended up doing the films with Woody Allen and became an American cinematographer, Hannah, her sisters, and all kinds of films that he made. And he was really a master of, just like Kubrick's film, you know, of the candlelight, you know, with the means that you had then at hand. I mean, technology keeps changing, and way back then it was really difficult to get what modernists to know much better. But then again, there's many Bergmans, black and white, color, business, artist, in one. There's not only one.
Or, for example, don't forget amazing visual style and visual structure in Wolf Horror, for example. One of his absolutely, it's almost horror. And according to Francois Truffaut, he always used to say one of the best movies in the whole history of cinema is Cries and Whispers. Why? He said there is only one red color and that's it.
Yes. Some things that I heard actually were in the close past. It was that it is not longer Strindberg, the most played theater writer in the world that comes from Sweden. It's actually Bergman. And it was something which I can say it's probably the only one filmmaker that is playing so much as a theater writer. And something, since I'm doing acting and this is something which is my passion and my work, I would like to ask you something in this triangle, like scenario, movie scenario, theater play, and then actually some kind of theater play in film and things like that. And he's also one theater director. He was still even a director to National Theatre in Sweden, Dramaten. Do you have something to relate to that? Actually, scenario is ground for this question.
When you look at his scripts, in our film school here at Belgrade, in fact, Drama Arts, our film script teachers always made fun the way Bergman wrote his scripts, because he was the way we are taught and the way, you know, like professional standard of writing a script is to be just action and words, no nothing too literary. When in fact Bergman would have a comment like this: Anna would look through the window and then she would remind herself of the last Thursday. It's a very abstract thing that only Liv Ullmann would know, because what was so specific for him that when he started writing, he always knew the actors that he wanted to work with. So he was, most of his scripts, when we talk of his phase after Wild Strawberries, were specifically designed for those actors that we see in the film. So therefore, it wasn't the kind of industrial thing where you would have to convince so many people of this is how it's going to be and only like this. He had a very close community of people he worked with, what Marit said a minute ago, and also he became extremely popular worldwide. He was a commercial director in the art house context, and his films were cheap, and his films had huge distribution in USA. USA distributors would turn his Swedish TV films into cinema films, and that's how Scenes from a Marriage became a film, because US distributors wanted that, and it wasn't his intention. So we also need to think about that he could pre-sale his films and still keep the complete control, because he was in a way very popular as a director, and he had this thing where he directed 4 or 5 plays in theater during the year, and during the summer he would shoot a film. So he was very structured and organized, and okay.
My first dilemma, and probably the main one, is he greater film director or greater theatrical director? For example, maybe some of you know that almost 40 years ago, on Bitev theatrical stage, we had a chance to see his epochal and historical work, Road to Damascus. It takes exactly 5 full hours, and before that, it was absolutely unbelievable to see the play with the stage rotated every 10 seconds. It's like film editing, not the stage. So he was a great person in all media, that's true. Don't forget his work as a writer, as a script writer. He's unbelievable, because in such a rigid form of the meaning, we can still find the influence of philosophical thinking, the influence of some medieval legend or Swedish tradition or Protestant tradition or something like that. So all these things are very, very complex things, and some of us need some help to describe it from time to time.
And I can just add that in Serbia, his most Autumn Sonata had several versions in theater, but those versions just turned into pure melodrama. That is not, because you need this kind of formal rigidity that he had to keep those things of falling on the other side of over-the-top emotions, and that's something that you can see if you look at those performances. They're like soaps, telenovelas, soap opera on stage, and when you look at him, it's a completely different thing. So that's something. And now we're going to have Scenes from Marriage as a play for the first time in Serbia.
I'm curious to know your opinion about the difference between theater and drinking in his work.
They have 5 hours? No, but it's there. Definitely, there has been conferences on the issue, I promise. But you're right. I mean, I think I mentioned sometime yesterday, was it, that as you pointed out, Bergman's university was very much, the theater. I mean, as you say, he did seasons, 2 seasons, spring and fall and winter in the theater. And of course, and in the summertime, because actors in Sweden at the time were without jobs. It's incredible to think about it. So he recruited them to his films. Now that's a very privileged position to be in. The fact, as he put it himself once, I mean, what filmmaker can do that really? Saying, when I write my scripts, I know exactly which people I want to have in that role. I write roles for certain actors, and knowing that he would most likely get them. And when it didn't happen, when he didn't get the actors he wanted, it was a bit of a catastrophe. For instance, maybe you don't know that the bishop in Fanny Alexander and the mother, Emily, in Fanny Alexander, also were supposed to be played by Max von Sydow, quintessential, iconic Bergman actor, and Liv Ullmann as the mother. And of course, Liv Ullmann has, I guess, if you come to listen to her, she tells that story in a very funny way of how she, when she said declined playing that role in Fanny Alexander, he said, Liv, now you lost the rights of the firstborn. And she said, I don't know what that means, but it sounded terrible. I mean, that meaning that, you know, he wouldn't think of writing roles for her the way he naturally would otherwise. But my point is, he built up, what's the word, a kind of ensemble over that he knew he could. And if you look at names in Bergman's films, they are usually clustered around certain actors and types. It's almost, pardon?
5 or 6 of them.
Yeah. Anna, Vergerus, Vogler, and you start thinking, oh, Vogler is a, you know, the artist type. Vergerus is somehow bourgeois, or Vergerus the bishop, who's bourgeois and religious and mean to poor Alexander and all that. So, yes, that the actor is definitely a link, obviously, but very much so, or even more so for Bergman, given that he worked in those fields. What I want to do when it comes to the script writing part, I just give a little, it's a bit of a quote here from, actually, Fanny and Alexander, from his diary. In a way, he writes in his diary now, and he talks to himself in third person. Bergman, he says, slapping his own hand, don't go into areas that can't be translated into film, you know. Don't write about sound, you know, smells and stuff like that, and too much about how things look. Well, what does he do? Listen to this. This is from the script, from Fanny Alexander. People smell in different ways. Their clothes smell not only of material, but of cooking, sweat, tobacco, and perfume. Their shoes smell of leather, board polish, and foot sweat. People go around as whole symphonies of odors: powder, tar, soap, urine, sex, dirt, pomade. Some smell of human beings in general, some smell safe. Others smell menacing. Esther, the housemaid, wears a wig which sticks to her bare scalp with a special kind of glue. Esther smells of glue all over. Grandmother smells of withering roses. Alexander's mother smells sweet as sweet as vanilla. But when she's angry, the down on her upper lip grows moist, and she exudes a barely perceptible but pungent odor that tells of danger, and so on and so forth. Very good writing. But that's the point. Bergman was a good writer, and that's why, as you know, as a publisher, his writing has been started to, you know, even more perhaps than before, translated, because it's worth reading in its own right. Which books have been, or which scripts have been given out in
Here,
yes,
Kliman's Best Intentions, or his autobiographical work, Antona Magica, or something like that.
Okay.
We did publish, I think, in German, not 4 titles at all.
But of his scripts, we have the trilogy, and Autumn Sonata, and I think that's it.
That's
The trilogy is, the most common thing that you can find. Yeah,
But is there one thing? Bergman, as a film director, was not so popular in Sweden in general. Do we have some explanation for that?
I don't know if I have the explanation, but you know, the cliche, you're never a philosopher in your own country. And besides, he was sort of out of tune with his own time. Think about it. Sweden, the most modern, the most profane, non-religious country in the world, it was called back in the 50s, where, you know, chuck God out of the window. Bergman did that later for himself. But in the 50s, extreme development materially and no sort of attention to spiritual matters. What happens? Bergman makes a film about a knight talking to death in a very old-fashioned style, allegory, you know, on medieval times. And then he did, of course, the trilogy of God as well, or God's Silence. Again, even if he chucked the God out of the window, it was still dealt with themes or matters that Swedes, in general, supposedly didn't consider very important in their lives. But then, later on, got around to. Interestingly, Bergman himself has these moments, for instance, in Cries and Whispers, where he lets a sort of inexplicable light fall through a window, perhaps on a suffering human being, like Agnes in that film, played by Harriet Andersson. And I think it's, tell me, you who are better schooled than me, somebody has said that in German, was du verlasst hast, wirst du noch dienen. What you think you have left behind, you will still serve. And in a way, Bergman served in his church, although it was kind to a relic, a remnant of a lost world. But it remained, spiritual matters remained important. Sometimes he clothed them in religious terms, later on in other terms, but they were still there.
Once or a few times I met Erland Josephson, and he answered me that Bergman became big first when he got this Cannes prize. Then he came with somebody who is a winner, and then Sweden understood actually that they have something at home. And we are talking about 1956 or something with this Sommarnattens Linde and Summer Nights Smile. Yeah.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to that, and in answer to your question about his popularity at home, it happens all the time. It always has to go through the Americans or the Europeans or whatever, you know, for the Swedes to understand, oh, they like him, okay, so we have a genius in our midst. And one critic said very well, if it rains on Bergman, it sprinkles on Sweden. So it's proud country.
Well, we are reached some subject which is next, and it's actors or actresses. When we start with the actors, collaboration with them, we know that there are the periods. Some of them, or most of them, he made actually. Almost all of the female actresses. And well, do we have something about that?
Erland Josephson is my favorite. Most people are somehow obsessed with Max, but for me Erland is much more interesting because you can see that in his later phase that Erland Josephson is really his alter ego in everything. And when you read his autobiographies and everything, that the two of them would talk every day for, I don't know, 2 hours on the like that. This kind of exchange that existed between them. But you have 3 actors he worked with, Erland, Max, and Gunnar, and the 3 of them are somehow him, his father, and the trinity he uses. And if you look, almost all of the female characters are called either Anna or Karin, and that's his mother and grandmother's name. So he liked that repetition and sticking with what he knows and kind of just going deeper with it. And Liv was, was also popular here because she was dating a TV presenter from our national TV, and their there are so many stories of seeing her in Belgrade restaurants in the 70s, and you can get a lot more clip. Yeah. But it's Bergman. Somehow it goes with it. And,
his way of directing the actors is unique and probably, I think, the greatest in the history. And there are very, very few other film directors in the history of world cinema. You can compare his work with them. Again, we have the name Kenji Mizoguchi in Japanese cinema. He was one of the greatest film directors, especially for his works with actors and actresses too. Absolutely, that's magic, and we have 3 actors and maybe 5 actresses, and it's secret for us how to express all these things in more than 40 feature films with 7 or 8 people. It's absolutely amazing question for me, and I prefer much more than only London. I apologize for that, the image of Harriet Anderson. Absolutely the amazing person in the history of European cinema in general, and how he treated her in Cries and Whispers is something absolutely unbelievable and one of the greatest things in the history of acting for me.
And what specific, only Max von Sydow had the big international career outside of Bergman. What Liv did some huge commercial films in the US that were completely forgettable and kind of almost laughable. Now, when you look at it, most of his team were kind of stuck with what they did with him, because he pushed them to the stardom and also to their extremes. He knew them so well. Only Max, we had those roles that were not just Virgin Spring and Seventh Seal and stuff like that.
Well, I'm not going to talk too much about that because we already touched a bit about actors and almost kind of typecasting also in Bergman, within the Bergman universe, so to speak. I perfectly understand what you say about Erla Josephson. I mean, they had similar sensibilities. Perhaps a lot of people don't know that Erla Josephson was also a writer. I mean, his first collections of novels came towards the end of the 50s, I think, in Sweden. And then he's written a series of portraits of his colleagues and people, Tarkovsky and Bergman and all that he knew. And he had something wonderful to say, which ties in with persona very well, and with Bergman's quest for identity, or trying to round up his own identity, I guess, and other people's. Josephson said once in his books, I have no problem with my identity. I know exactly who I are. And he added somewhere, and I hope I get myself at the end, to get a happy end, somehow get together with all these facets. That's about it. We could say a lot about that too.
I remember once when I was studying acting that the Bergman is divided into 5, 6, 7 period, and all of them are divided with actresses when he collaborates with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or how many. How you look about that from the Swedish perspective?
You mean what actresses? Yeah, that sort of touches on sort of the gossipy ground. Everybody knows that Bergman was what could be called a womanizer, but also as Harriet Anderson, who is now an octogenarian, 80 plus something, sharp lady, said to a journalist just this year, because they were obviously interviewing Bergman on Bergman issue on the Me Too and the waves of Me Too thing. And, trying to say it wasn't Ingmar and blah, blah, blah. And of course, there was an asymmetrical, if you look at it in crass terms, no doubt, asymmetrical relationship between an employer-director and especially a young actress who is very much dependent on him. But then Harriet Anderson, whom you like, said, sort of slapped the journalist on the fingers and said, it wasn't Bergman who sort of, what do you call it, seduced me. I was looking for seduced. I seduced him, darn it, you know. And she was gorgeous. She was 19, 20, and of course it felt like a log. So I think that if somebody should look into that in serious terms, it has to be a very well-schooled scholar who can historicize and look at how really things looked at the time. And besides, all the women who are still actors who have worked with him, Gunnar Lindblom in The Silence, she made films for him in his production company, Cinematograph, in the beginning of the 70s. She became a director herself, has very good relationships, had very good relationships with them. Same with theater actors, actresses, old ones as well as young ones like Lena Endre and so on and so forth. And so there are no stories seeping in, so there's nothing
what
to
about
look
Lena
for.
Olin in the late phase?
Pardon?
Lena Olin in the late phase?
In the late phase.
After the rehearsal.
Yeah, after the rehearsal. What was
Yeah.
Now the one thing I've heard, and that has to do with power relations for sure, but she stuck it out. She played Indra's daughter in Dream Play by Strindberg, and she became pregnant. And there was a good way of you know, hiding it through dresses and stuff like that. But he became angry and said, you know, I mean, you have to wait for becoming, you know, women always, you know, either they ooze from some crevice somewhere or they get pregnant and they ruin art. And of course, those are terrible things to say. Absolutely, I agree. And so I'm not here to defend Bergman. I'm sure he has, all through the years he's been working in the theater and film, made himself enemies. Certain actors and him didn't get together, and he probably walked over a few of them in a way that was not acceptable. But I would just say one thing. It seems to me, and I think, that male actors have had more of a difficult time with Bergman than women, because he has tended to listen to them more and also write roles for them. Interesting roles. Sometimes more interesting than men.
Time is passing, and I would like to open some time just if there is some question that would be interesting from this very, very interesting dialogue. Some question that could be interesting for anyone up here. Yes.
I would like to pose a question. How come Bergman is so acknowledged and acknowledged in Serbia? As you said, in Sweden he is famous, but he is also known for his very heavy sides, and there is some kind of distance towards him. Here in Serbia, I was very surprised when I'm from the Swedish Embassy in Belgrade, and one of the organizers here. So I once again would like to express my admiration for the Serbian cinema public that recognized Bergman that he's not alive anymore, and we didn't even need to get out with an open call for participants. People were calling the embassy in order to ask us whether we would celebrate or mark the centenary of his birth. I'm still surprised by the fact that he's so deeply rooted here. Yes.
I can answer. He's a great director.
Yes.
Since when I came to the school of the acting, it was like Bergman is first lesson.
Yeah.
Just come and see. And actually, people who would study movie, they were like, come with me to Kinoteka and just watch. Because Bergman is part of the education in movie science, if we are talking about that. I mean, movie art and everything. And he's just a big director from international perspective. And Belgrade used to follow films.
This number of participants, that's what I find really.
Yeah.
I think there are two things also, because he was his career was at its peak when this was a serious country that had a serious you know, film publications, serious education on the way things were approached, even in media, and what was written about. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, if from Swedish perspective you look at Kusturica, Kusturica is exotic, Bergman is exotic also from this perspective. He has what I said at the beginning. This is something that's very different in this way that you look at with awe and with respect, and so those two elements were also really important.
I agree partially. But you know, at the end of the 70s, at the beginning of the 80s, Bergman in Belgrade was not a film director, but a god, a real god. You know? You compare his position with some other film colleagues or film directors, they were nothing. You know? So I think there are many reasons for that. You know? But one of them is that we had strong intellectual elite in that time, very westernized, and they are trying to be trendy, you know, and to be part of European thinking in general as a part of Europe, you know. And his quality here was enormous, and his reputation enormously growing up, especially the late of the 70s and the whole of the 80s until now. So he's not film director for us, you know. He's a question much more than film director questions.
Yeah, I just want to say that probably because the younger generation don't have this kind of history, baggage on their back on Bergman, they probably have a much better level-headed approach than people who really adulated, as you say, Bergman as a god, which is ridiculous on the other end. I mean, I've sat in the archives and looked at read letters from Swedish people and people from abroad too, asking him for advice in sexual matters, in religious matters, in everything. He was supposed to be able to answer everything. Hundreds of letters that people, you know, and not these women, you know, basically wanted to marry him and all that. You know, he was really a celebrity kind of star back in the 60s, 70s. And American actors wanted to work with him. Barbra Streisand, maybe you read about it in his Magic Langton. He describes it very well.
Pool party.
Yeah, that's right. When she invited him to a pool party, he said to his wife, Ingrid, let's go back home. He was not going to sit by a pool party. But yeah, you know, I mean, so they were actually seeking him. But you know, that kind of adulation is good if it's gone, you know, and people, and especially young people, can approach him without all that hullabaloo, so to speak. You know.
You know what? Persona is starting in 5 minutes, and we have a little bit to come down. Enjoy the next movie, which is, I can say, one of the most beautiful movies done in cinema history. At least from the acting part, from this part, because this woman in some kind of dialogue is amazing, great thing, and it's going out now in the theater too. Thank you so much. Thank you all. See you next few days. And take this, it's